We've attempted mediation for the past 6 years.
Tonight, a fight over who owns a huge and popular freshwater beach heats up.
We've been in a state of burnout because of the shortage of staff.
The only Inuktitut-speaking daycare in Iqaluit has to close down because of a lack of staff.
Sending a message of welcome to our most important neighbors, I think, is a starting point.
And only one word on one sign, but it could bring two communities closer together. Good evening, welcome to APTN National News. I'm Dennis Ward.
And I'm Melissa Ridgen. A First Nation in southwestern Ontario is gearing up for a sand fight. The long-time battle is over a prime piece of beach property. Here's Annette Francis with that story.
This stretch of beach is a popular vacation spot. At 7 kilometers long, it's the second largest freshwater beach in the world. It's also part of a long-standing dispute.
It's not a land claim issue, it's a boundary issue. It's very specific in our treaty that the boundary starts here at our border of Saugeen and ends 9.5 miles north, which would be 6th Street North, Sauble.
Sauble Beach runs along the eastern shores of Lake Huron on the northern edge of Saugeen First Nation. Chief Lester Anaquat says the boundary issues have been ongoing for far too long.
We've attempted mediation for the past 6 years. Current mayor, has specifically said she wouldn't settle out of court. So we've put a summary judgment motion forward, been presented to the courts. We expect to be in court to address the issue of boundary within 6 to 9 months.
The move doesn't sit well with Mayor Janice Jackson of South Bruce Peninsula. She declined to speak with APTN, but in a recent Facebook post, she states her disappointment. This summary judgment asks the court to rule in their favor without going to trial, and we have spent nearly 150 years building a vibrant community around our beach. Simply because he claims the beach belongs to his band doesn't mean we should hand over the keys. That's not exactly what Chief Anaquat has in mind.
Not a lot will change with the landscape. We would, with the two businesses that operate there, would be a change in the landlord. They could start paying us the lease to operate there, or we could do it ourselves. But there wouldn't be any change to public access to the beach. There wouldn't be any change to the landscape, and there certainly wouldn't be any vehicles allowed on the beach, as we have moved to stop vehicle traffic on our side of the current side that we operate. We don't allow vehicles on the beach anymore. It's an issue of environmental hazard and safety.
Both parties are anxious to have the dispute settled. The new motion will be heard sometime in 2020. Annette Francis, APTN National News, Sauble Beach.
There is just one Inuktitut daycare in Iqaluit, and it's been closed since last week. Parents are scrambling to try to keep it open, but it's an uphill challenge. Kent Driscoll explains.
This playground shouldn't look like this on a weekday. Usually, it's full of Inuit kids chattering away in Inuktitut.
This daycare is provided in Inuktitut, which is the biggest thing, which ties into staying rooted in our culture as Inuit, with a full-time cook. Everyone staffed here, all the children here are Inuit, speaking Inuktitut at home already. And this place is to help them remain speaking Inuktitut.
Tumikuluit Saipakavik means sweet little footprints in Inuktitut, and it's the only Inuktitut daycare in Iqaluit with spots for 16 kids and 4 infants. They're short-staffed right now and haven't been able to open for a week. Inuktitut-speaking staff are in high demand in Iqaluit. One of Iqaluit's biggest employers is the government of Nunavut, and some of their policies are not helping.
It's a bit of a difficult situation, especially for government of Nunavut employees, from what I gather, because you are not allowed to use special leave when you have a lack of childcare.
They're rolling out a makeshift stopgap plan. The parents are getting their criminal records checks from the RCMP and will take turns taking days off work to run the daycare, which will help. depending on whether the government of Nunavut treats it as a second job.
The government of Nunavut may not allow employees to take on a second job, which would be working at the daycare. So we're in a precarious situation with government of Nunavut employees.
The wait lists for daycare in Iqaluit are so long, people sign their kids up the moment they learn that they're pregnant. When this one can't open, that means 20 different families have to make other plans, disrupting life and work.
And we've been in a state of burnout because of the shortage of staff. And so people get sick, the children get sick. It's like the cycle of trying our best and then health failing and, exhaustion setting in.
Usage of Inuktitut in Nunavut is declining by about 1% a year. Language is easier to learn when you're young and your brain is still developing. And yet, this playground is still empty. And who knows for how much longer. Kent Driscoll, APTN National News, Iqaluit.
The Minister of Indigenous Services was in a Mi'kmaq community to support economic development and infrastructure. Federal funding will help with the costs of building a travel center and water well. Angel Moore reports.
Buckingeg Mi'kmaq Nation wants to generate revenue and create jobs, and those jobs already started at the construction site for a new travel center. Kelsey Paul is an apprentice carpenter.
I was working with the community, but then I jumped on here because for the community we don't get much commercial work, and so this was great for my training, and it'll help when I get my red seal.
Indigenous Services Canada provided $2.9 million for highway infrastructure development and $1 million of the construction of the Bayside Travel Centre. Seamus O'Regan announced the money in Buckingeg.
A prosperous Canada needs a prosperous Indigenous economy, and that can only happen if it's Indigenous built and Indigenous driven.
The centre will include a gas station, convenience store, restaurants, an entertainment centre, and a lounge for long-haul truckers.
They're seeing improvements in fire halls and roads, but really, particularly in healthcare, education, and housing. And with that, it's starting to whet the appetite for what's next. And what's next is economic development, because that's economic self-sufficiency.
Chief Paul Prosper says the project is a result of hard work and collaboration.
A lot of people have, this vision of Buckingeg being a vibrant, prosperous, and thriving community, and it's within their hearts, it's within their minds, and this is the reality of that vision they had.
The federal government is also investing $430,000 for the construction of a new well that will be the main water supply. The community has one well that has sediment leakage.
So this will provide an alternate source of water for our community, so it gives us that flexibility. If we're having issues with one, we can sort of rely on the other well for our community, so happy about that.
The well is expected to be operational in a few months, with the travel centre opening by October. Angel Moore, APTN National News, Buckingeg, Mi'kmaq Nation.
Time for a quick break, and then we sit down with Jody Wilson-Raybould.
But first, a look at Wednesday's weather forecast. Off to the east coast, we've got 27 in sunshine in Fredericton, 17 in cloud in St. John's. Cartwright is mixed sun and cloud and 11 degrees, and Nukjuak is raining in 17. 21 in rain in Chibougamau, Saguenay, 27 and rain. 25 in Ottawa, mostly cloudy. 25 in sunshine for Peterborough and Toronto. Kapuskasing is raining in 18, rain in Thunder Bay in 16. Pukatawagan sunshine in 15, 17s for Thompson, Norway House and the Paw and cloudy skies. 22 and rain in Winnipeg and Gimli, 22 in sunshine in Brandon. 26, lots of sun in Swift Current, 25 and sunny in Estevan. Stony Rapids is 17 and rain, 14 and rain in La Ronge, and 19 and rain in Meadow Lake. In British Columbia, Jody Wilson-Raybould has opened the doors to her new campaign headquarters. Wilson-Raybould is running as an independent candidate in the riding of Vancouver-Granville after being kicked out of the Liberal caucus over the SNC-Lavalin affair. APTN's Laurie Hamlin sat down with Wilson-Raybould and has this.
So first I'd like to speak about the Commissioner's report. You released a statement responding that you felt vindicated, but also sadness. Maybe you can explain that.
Sure. I mean, I read the report thoroughly. I welcome the report from the Ethics Commissioner. It was a vindication for the independent role of the Attorney General, the independent role of the Director of Public Prosecutions. And that's incredibly important in terms of maintaining our institutions and ensuring that they are operating on an independent basis. So in that sense, it was a vindication, a lot of confirmation about what I've been saying over the past number of months. And the sadness came from the reality that we shouldn't have to think about upholding our institutions or upholding the rule of law. We have, as a country, I believe, functioned on the basis of principles and values that underline the freedoms that we have in our system of government, and it is important that we be constantly vigilant about upholding our institutions. And in that case, or in this case, the sadness came from that shouldn't be something that's a hard thing to do, and sadness that we are in this situation in the first place because we didn't have to be.
The Prime Minister says he takes full responsibility, but he cannot apologize because he was standing up for Canadian jobs. How do you feel about that?
Well, I've said before, I mean, of course jobs are important. I believe it's the fundamental role of the Prime Minister, any Prime Minister, to stand up for the rule of law, stand up for our institutions, the fundamental tenets of our democracy first and foremost. And we can't have and make decisions based on one person's will during a particular day or political expediency. We have to ensure that we uphold the rule of law. In terms of jobs, in terms of the Prime Minister not apologizing, I think it was a missed opportunity. I think that for me as a Canadian, it would have been nice, and I was always taught that if you do something wrong, that you make amends and you apologize for it. I think it was a missed opportunity for the Prime Minister to apologize to Canadians.
You are now running as an independent, and which is exciting. But why did you not join another party? Maybe explain that.
Sure. Well, I never expected to be in the situation that I'm in, although I embrace the reality of running as an independent here in Vancouver-Granville, and hopefully continuing on being a strong independent voice for the constituents of Vancouver-Granville. I had opportunities to join other political parties, certainly engaged in discussions with Elizabeth May, for example, and Jagmeet Singh, but it was a hard decision for me to get involved in politics, federal politics in the first place, and join the Liberal Party. I align very closely with the values of the Liberal Party in terms of justice, inclusion, and equality. That hasn't changed. I'm still the same person that I was prior to the last election, still hold the same values. But for me, I didn't see myself trying to fit into another box of a party. And that's not to say that parties are necessarily completely bad, but I feel that my voice and working as an independent member of Parliament, trying to build consensus, trying to build bridges and address issues from as much of a nonpartisan position, speaks to who I am, my worldview, but speaks to where I think the country needs to go in terms of addressing substantial issues like the environment and taking action on climate change, Indigenous reconciliation. The only way we're going to address those issues is if we're working all together and establishing and coming up with solutions that will stand the test of time.
I had read in an article about blind loyalty. You don't want to be a part of that.
Well, I believe strongly in teamwork and the necessity of working together. But I was raised based on certain principles and values and having integrity and being able to look oneself in the mirror when you go home at night, knowing that you've done everything you can and you've lived by the values and the principles that you were raised with. And I will always operate like that in my personal life, of course, but certainly in my public life and professional life. There's no world that I can see where loyalty to party can trump one's principles and values or doing the right thing and telling the truth. In the culture that I come from, if we don't tell the truth, if we don't operate based on those values and principles, then our society dies, and we need to be constantly aware of ensuring that we do the right thing. So that's how I will continue to lead my life.
We'll have the rest of that interview with Wilson Raybould on tomorrow's show.
Coming up, a sign of a better relationship between two neighbors.
That's after the break, but first here's the rest of Wednesday's weather forecast. To northern Alberta, we've got 18s for Grand Prairie and Peace River and sunny skies. 20 and sunny in Edmonton, 23 and sunny in Lethbridge. 23 and sunshine in Vancouver, 28 and sunny in Campbell River. 19 and cloud in Fort Nelson, 19 and sunny in Prince George. 18 and sunshine in Dawson City, Mayo's 19 and sunshine, so is Watson Lake. Wrigley and Fort Simpson and Trout Lake and Fort Laird is 20 degrees, lots of sunshine. 5 and mix of sun and cloud in Tuck. Colville Lake is rain and 10. 11 and mix of sun and cloud up in Cambridge Bay. Whale Cove is 12 and rainy, and Arvey it's 11 and rain. Igloolik, mix of sun and cloud 16. Clyde River 12 and mostly sunny. Pangertung mostly sunny and 13.
back. A well-known Dene artist from the Northwest Territories is almost sold out of the first print of his memoir. Our reporter Charlotte Mort-Jacobs sat down with the author to understand why he penned his story.
Every summer, Antoine Mountain returns to his homelands of Rade-le-Camp, Fort Good Hope. A respected Dene artist, his creativity is peppered throughout the small community.
All of the names of the people that passed away from cancer here in Rade-le-Camp, Fort Good Hope, are on a scroll.
For 15 years, Mountain has been a northern newspaper columnist, but this summer, he penned his very first memoir.
People used to travel a long ways just to hear stories from one particular person, you know, and there was a lot of them around here, elders that really knew how to put a story together.
In the book, From Bear Rock Mountain, The Life and Times of a Dene Residential School Survivor, he shares stories of hardships being taken away from his family. It's been well received. Since publication in June of 2019, almost all first copies have been sold.
It was very difficult because on the one hand, the publishers want to take a professional approach to get all the information right. But on the other hand, you're dealing with, as you say, total strangers digging into your personal life, especially at from a very early age, and you're really not wanting to participate. But people used to do this all over town right here, tanning moose hides wherever they found space to work.
Mountain says dealing with 8 editors during publication wasn't easy. During this process, he was also working on his PhD in art at Trent University. But even with his worldly travels, Mountain says he will remain true to his people.
Our interpretation of intelligence has very little or virtually nothing to do with the mind, reading or anything like that. It's about if a person knows how to handle themselves on the land with an axe, gun, or a knife, or even stories is a really valuable way of communicating amongst our people.
Mountain wanted to include the Dene spirituality shared with him that has helped him understand his identity. Like one instance where a healer told him of the root cause of his ailment.
It's the spirit of that bear. It's reaching out to you. It's trying to get you to be one of them, and it's also trying to tell you something about yourself. And he said, probably you're Shitout in a mountain Dene people.
Mountain says that shedding a light on all the corners of his life through the memoir was cathartic.
What's next?
Well, I'm running out of challenges. I might apply to be Mickey Mouse in Disneyland or something like that, but originally I started with 800 pages, of which 371 were printed for this book, so there's more.
Charlotte Mort-Jacobs, APTN National News, Fort Good Hope.
It's just one word on a sign, but it promises to bring 2 communities closer together, the city of Cornwall, Ontario, and the Akwesasne Mohawk Nation. APTN's Todd Lamarand starts us off merging to the busy 401 freeway.
If you aren't paying attention, this Welcome to Cornwall sign looks like many other city markers. But on closer inspection, it contains the Mohawk word Sago, hello in English.
Having our language on their signage is important to us. It signifies that, you know, there's a respect and that, you know, we are neighbors and we're here to, you know, support one another.
Cornwall is a city of about 47,000 people. It sits across from Akwesasne on the St. Lawrence River. And recently, its city council voted to put Sago on 2 Welcome to Cornwall signs.
Sending a message of welcome to our most important neighbors, I think, is a starting point that then starts to show the rest of the province, the rest of the area, how good a place this is.
The idea to change the sign came out of a dinner between the 2 councils back in June. The first such breaking of bread in 10 years. First-term Mayor Clement says the city had lost sight of an important priority.
If we want to attract more investment, attract more people to the area, then we need to be working well together.
Kicked off, kind of a renewed efforts, renewed relationship between our two councils, wanting to take better, more in-depth look at what those other opportunities are, what those commonalities are.
Akwesasne and Cornwall jointly own this piece of land on the waterfront, a former deep-water port. So the need to work together to develop it is much more than a symbolic gesture.
We're always looking for opportunities for the region. As the region grows, our community will benefit from that as well, so we want to find ways that we can support that.
Mayor Clement takes a cue from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's calls to action when going forward.
And I think that we need to take inspiration from that and move forward and incorporate a lot more relationship building into everything that we do.
Mayor Clement did mention that she'd like to have more Mohawk on more City of Cornwall signs. But there's no timeline on when that's going to happen. Todd Lamoran, APTN National News, Cornwall, Ontario.
Well, that is your APTN National News for this Tuesday.
But for much more, you can always visit our website, aptnnews.ca. You can download the APTN News app. I'm Melissa Ridgen. Thanks for tuning in.
And I'm Dennis Ward. Have a good night. See you back here tomorrow.